Hi, this is jksimmons. I met Chris Shermer at the Missoula Police Department several years ago when my mom was a member of the police commission. And shortly after meeting him, as with most people, I began to learn about his passion for watches. A few years ago, Chris showed me some of the vintage Jardur watches he has, and they're amazing, and they immediately took me back to a time when I sported my grandfather's watch. It's been really great to watch Chris's efforts to memorialize the history of a lot of these veterans, including guys like my grandfather and three of my uncles, guys who may have passed through the cracks, and many of whom wore this brand. Jardur is a great watch, and it's a great story.
Welcome to this hobby of ours. I am your host, Steve. Very, very pleased to bring you this episode today because we are speaking with none other than C.C. Shermer, Chris, the author of the Jardur book, its history and its escadrille, along with him being the current owner of the Jardur brand. You have no doubt seen the Golden Ronin, my personal Jardur, on the channel in the past. Reached out to Chris. I forget how or why, but I was just super interested in learning more about the brand, and it turns out I stumbled onto the modern owner of it. He is an Army veteran, currently works with law enforcement up in Montana, doing a bunch of good things, and as I understand it, he found his way into his first Jardur in 2005, and we're going to learn a little bit about his journey with watches, his journey with the brand, where he found it, where he's taking it, and who knows what's coming next. So without further ado, let's welcome Chris to the program. Chris, how are you, sir? Great to have you on the show today.
I'm awesome, D, and thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Super glad to have you. And I have to say, I have to commend Chris. An amazing background between the tabletop and the tactical maps in the background. Kurt, you've got some things some pointers you could take from Chris, our friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, it's so great to have you on the program. Tell us a little about yourself, and then I'll get into I've got my little list of questions over here, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Get us kicked off.
Well, yeah, my name is Chris Shermer, and like you said, I go by CC in the watch industry. I grew up in Missouri and sort of the northwest part of Arkansas, and joined the military after high school, did 3.5 years with the Army Infantry, and then eventually moved to Missoula to go to school, and got my degree, and then became a cop in 2000, and then did that for about 19 years until I became a chief of police up in a small town, very small town in Montana, which really didn't take, did that for about 9 months, and then we then moved to Helena, where I am now currently as a criminal investigator for the state of Montana. And I'm married to Cher. And I have two children. One's here in Helena and one's in Missoula. So yeah, that's...
Well, thank you for your service. That is a robust service career, to say the least.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an amazing thing. I love talking to service personnel, and this could have easily been a Hobby of Heroes episode, but we wanted to focus on the watches per se, and the book, and what he's been doing it. If you're not familiar, if you've been living under a watch rock and you're not familiar with the Jardur brand, very famously worn by Robert De Niro in Ronin. I'm sure it's popped up in a handful of other movies. I know you have a friend in the biz who wore one. We're going to hear about that story, but let's kind of dive in, rolling it back a little bit. What got you interested in watches generally from the get-go?
Well, actually, believe it or not, the movies Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 2 kind of shaped my life. First one being that I wanted to be a cop, like, Bruce Willis. And then the second one, they did a lot of promoting a brand, the Tag Heuer brand. And so the bad guys wore those. So I really was enamored by Tag and started collecting Tag Heuers. And, the quartz ones, obviously a little cheaper. And then I just started moving into the mechanical ones, like the Heuers, the vintage pieces, if you will. And then Jardur came on the scene. And then I didn't stop with, I actually started just doing vintage Jardurs. I started collecting those. So really, it was the movie Die Hard that got me. It's basically shaped my life.
Best Christmas movie ever.
Yes, and I agree with
Although
that.
Lethal Weapon, also technically a Christmas movie and on par, but I think everyone would probably agree that Die Hard is indeed the best Christmas movie ever.
Hey.
How did you find the brand Jardur? Were you just like cruising eBay on some Friday night?
No, it was actually interesting. So it was like you said, 2005. I had befriended somebody that knew a B-25 Mitchell pilot from World War II. He was friends with him, and unfortunately, the gentleman had passed before I could meet him. And he's like, "Hey, you should look at the watch collection that he had." I was able to obtain a few pieces from the World War II vet. And one of them was one of the bezel meter icons, tool watches that he wore. And so this being '05, not a lot of information on the internet was out there at all. And the only thing that I had found was the Smithsonian had posted a picture of Jimmy Doolittle, General Doolittle's Jardur watch, which was given to him by the guy that designed the B-25 Mitchells that he used to go bomb Tokyo after Pearl Harbor. So,
wow.
So then that's kind of how I was able to get, into with the Jardur brand. And then with that information, initially, then I started diving into the New York City archives because I knew the brand was from New York City. Learned a lot from the old business licensing, business names, business changes. So again, the big primary focus was, who was involved, when did they start it, when did they end, if you could find that. So then once I obtained all, and then if there are any ancestors or descendants that are aware of it, and I was able to make contact with them. Eventually, got contact with them. They just didn't know anything about the brand, which was interesting. And then, they're like, so I asked if I could obtain it, and they said sure. And so I obtained the brand, trademarked it, and then started the website. Mostly, first to get that information that I found about the history, and then. And once I got the website going, the stories that came from individuals calling me from their ancestors, in the Pacific War, the European theater, it was just amazing, cool stories. So I really wanted to put those stories out for those vets that wore the brand, and that was again part of the intent on the website. So
maybe the origin. I'm sensing a little bit of origin of the book as well.
Yeah. So. All I have is their names on the website for the most part. So, I wanted to create that book. So, first of all, have the collectors have something tangible to use for Jardur history or whatever. But, I wanted to highlight those individuals as much as I can. As you can see in the second part, those individuals that wore the brand, like Jimmy and Carl Spatz and all those cool guys. So, that was the purpose for that.
Now, a cool book. If you've not seen my review of it, it is in the Jardur video, link below. Also, link to Chris's website, which has a bunch of information on there about, the escadrille. Escadrille means squadron?
Yep, in French. Yep.
Yeah, in French. My French is fairly rusty, but it has a bunch of cool stories. If you're into war era stories, memorabilia, etc., you will very much enjoy the book, as I indeed have. And that is quite the rabbit hole, going from, checking out a really cool collection to digging through archives in another city. That's fairly impressive. Coming back to the book and what you may have learned from writing it, what was your experience of putting out a book? I myself have put out a book. I learned a bunch of stuff from this. However, I was using AI and not, bona fide hero stories. But what did you learn through that book writing experience?
Well, first I learned that I could write a book. A lot of people don't feel that they could, but the history of the brand wrote itself. All I had to do is just find whatever that I found, put it in some kind of sequence of events, and then again, the stories that came of the people that used to wear the watch. That pretty much was easy to just plug and play. And then, third part, obviously the people that wear the degree meter now. But, I learned that I could do it. But I also learned sort of this humility side of we're not all perfect. Can the watch or can the book be better? yeah, it can be better. But then finding those right people to make sure that it is better. Talking to people like you to like, okay, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? That have done it before. And so just a little bit of humility. We're our biggest critics, right? So I can make a better second edition. I can guarantee you that. So
I'm totally looking forward to that. And you mentioned something I want to jump into. So this is the bezel meter, and what we're going to show, what I'll put up on screen is Chris's reiteration called the degree meter. I'll put that up. And so tell us, basically, he made a watch.
right.
And it is a modern iteration playing on the theme of all the aspects of the vintage piece. Tell us a little bit about that piece and what got you motivated to release a watch as a business person contemplating that. I can't imagine releasing a watch by my own. I'm thrilled to hear about it.
Well, it was pretty daunting. I was able to make contact with a aviation company that was just awesome. The owner was part of law enforcement, and I got to talking to her about the brand and my endeavor to make watches. And so she actually said, "Go make me some watches." There was a certain amount that she wanted, and I wanted to, do the iconic bezel meter, but there's a few things that I couldn't find. Movement that size, because we all know the size of that is 36 millimeter ish, and so that was tough. And then, but I also wanted to get my feet wet before I did do the icon bezel meter. So I went with a larger case with that housed the 7750, the ETA 7750, which we all kind of know. We all know that it's
The Fitty.
yeah, it's a versatile movement, very reliable, very accurate. So was able to get a few of those and put everything together. I did learn a lot. I didn't learn many, or I'm sorry, I didn't have to make many, which was good for the minimum order quantity in Switzerland. So,
Okay.
and I only have a few left, for family and friends still left over. But I did keep some of the Jardur DNA from the bezel meter and the degree meter. One of them being the degree meter scale that is the only scale you'll ever see out there. Is Jardur only has that, and it's interesting that nobody else has used it for aviation tool watches. So, but anyway, that's sort of the, like I said, getting my feet wet without having to do the bezel meter first was very beneficial. So,
Yeah, indeed, and it's certainly very cool. So I have I have a pit stop question before I go to your relationship with Hollywood. What would you do differently with either the book or the degree meter, having the benefit of hindsight at this point? Either or.
well, I think finding the right people for both projects is, key. Designers, watchmakers, key components of in finding the people with the right vision, or they could take my vision, but getting people to kind of go along with that, it was kind of key. I think as watch aficionados, we want perfection to some degree, and finding the right manufacturer to coalesce or merge those aesthetics, reliability, versatility, accuracy into a watch that then that you love to wear is really my primary focus. And there are plenty of competent watchmakers out there. We all know them, but again, it kind of takes money to make money, and that's the tough part, because the aviation company that ordered the watches, I mean, that was a big check, and that's like, I hope I can get it right. So what I learned is, humility. Make sure that you get people in the watch industry to be like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? People that want to see you do well. And you're one of them. And you're one of them. And so you've always been a big advocate of Jardur, and I really appreciate that. So getting people like yourself to be like, hey, what do you think about this? And getting people's, and not just from my perspective, your perspective, and the potential buyers too. So.
Yeah, collaborative efforts, certainly, and keeping an eye on the market. We're not going to talk about some of the secret stuff we've been talking about offline, because there are some ideas that I just kind of floated. I love sending ideas to people with no expectation of return, and we had a bunch of really fun conversations. So keep your eye on the horizon. And before we get to what's coming next for Jardur, which is going to be a big portion of what we're going to discuss today, I want to hear. I've heard it. I'd like the viewership to hear a little bit about your brush with Hollywood and one of our mutual favorite actors.
Yeah, jksimmons. Yeah, it's a pretty neat story. I was at the Missoula Police Department coming out of a bad guy interview, and this guy's got his back turned, and he's got this obviously very specific voice, and he turns, and I'm like, hey, you're the guy that plays in played in Lady Killer with Tom Hanks. That your character at IBS, and he looks at me and has this dirty look on his face and says, "I just did Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, and this is the movie you remember me in." And
that must have been so funny.
Well, it was, and we got all our pictures together. It was actually kind of cool, great introduction, if you will. But after that, we got to talking about watches, and he got really intrigued by watches. The brand, actually, specifically, he came into town one time and wanted to see all the vintage pieces that you see out here. So I showed him a bunch of that, and then he called or emailed me one time and said, "Hey, I'm doing a show called Counterpart on Stars, and he plays two roles of the same character, but one role is kind of a wet noodle, one role is really kind of a badass, and he wanted to wear the vintage pieces on the sort of wet noodle-ish kind of character, and then wear the degree meter as a badass." And so he did that really good show, and then
it was like a multi-universe type deal.
Yeah, it was they found a time, like a time warp or something like that. That two parallel worlds going, same time on both sides, but just totally different. And so he wore that, or the brand in that, and then a few years back he said, "Hey, I want to wear the degree meter and the Tomorrow War," which has Chris Pratt. It's like an alien movie, and
great movie.
Oh yeah,
I've seen it.
And it's funny, he kind of got jacked up with his, working out, and we got to watching it, and he's got the, the watch on, and he's got these big biceps on. I said, and my wife's like, "Oh, I haven't seen JK in a long time."
Good job, JK. Way to crush it, brother.
Oh yeah, he's taking over there, So, and then he just recently filmed The Union. We talked about The Union with Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry, and and that was an interesting sort of getting the watch in hand. I actually reached out to the Instagrammers because it was going to cost like ungodly amount of money to get it overseas, because they were shooting in England. And so I reached out to all my Instagram guys and found a guy in England that had a Jardur watch. And I said, "Hey, man, would you like your watch in the movie?" And he's like, "Oh my God." I said, "Get it down to JK," and he did. And I'm not quite sure if he met him or not. It was the prop guy, but it was awesome. It was just like, the connectedness with YouTubers and all the social network guys, and that cult. I call it the cult following of Jardur, which it just played out. The vibes on the whole thing just played out awesomely. So
that's absolutely a beautiful story. It's like, talk about, if you need some logistics tackled, get some military personnel on the job. They'll solve that for you. Tapping the network to get a vintage watch in another country, driven down to set, into the property master, and onto the wrist of JK. That I love that story, brother. I love radical logistics, problem solving. Absolutely adore it. That's a great story, brother.
Well, thank you.
Now, so what is indeed, without talking about some of the secret stuff we've been talking about, because we're going to keep it secret, got to keep it embargoed for a little while. What do you suppose is next for you and Jardur? And I will, if I've not done so already, I'm going to get a close-up of that amazing tabletop display. I'm in my town, he's in his town, but we will sort it out. So what is next for you and the brand, speaking broadly, if not generally?
Well, I guess the endeavor of resurrecting a watch or reviving watch, in and of itself has been a wonderful chapter in my life. I'm still fairly young, as we've talked about offline, and I still have plenty of energy to get it to whatever next level we need to get it to. One of the cool things that's happened, that happens with the brand is sort of all this organic stuff. If it's you and I or JK or these vets, and I don't want to lose that organicness. I don't want it to be work, kind of thing.
Wise.
Yeah, it has great vibes. It has allowed me to meet some of the coolest people on earth. Cool story. I met a guy on the phone, and his name is Julian. And Julian said, "Hey, do you sell old watches?" And I said, "No, you can get them on Chrono 24 or eBay or whatever." He goes, "Well, I lost mine in the war." And I said, "You were in the war?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, were you an aviator? Because the aviators wore this watch." And he's like,
Right.
"No, I was a gunner on a U.S. Navy Helldiver." And I said, "Well, how many missions you fly?" And he said, "One." And I said, "Well, which one?" He goes, "Right before the landing party of Iwo Jima." And I'm like, I got to meet this guy. And he lives on Long Island, and this brand started in New York City. So I looked through all my pieces. He sent me a picture of it. I have one of those. I said, "Julian, can you make it at 874 Broadway where this business started?" And he's like, "I can do it." And I met him in front. We actually met a lady during my research that lived in the building, and she brought us up, took the pictures. I presented the watch to Julian, and then we went to the oldest bar in New York City per her.
Yeah.
And ate, drank. He wanted a vodka gimlet. I got a scotch, and we just ate and talked about football and World War II. And so, coming back to what's next, it's making sure that we have those vibes. Those cool things is the coolest part of it all. And I even went up to the Smithsonian to look at Jimmy Doolittle's watch. It was sort of my holy grail, if you will. I held it, and so that's that cool organic stuff. So, but the brand is, it sometimes sits on a shelf, sometimes it doesn't, and I take it down, if you will. Talking to you really gets me excited about, doing stuff with it. What does it look like? I don't know, co-branding, a partnership. I'm always open to anything that feels right, and
Right.
Someone with the same energy, the same vision with the brand, I'm always open to it, so, but as we have to make ends meet, and
Yeah.
we all have to work, and sometimes that gets in
That's why.
the way,
That's why we have our side hustle. But also something you mentioned offline is still continuing to attract and document all those hero stories.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are seeing this video and you have some Jardur history or a relative or got hero stories, feel free to reach out to Chris. His contact information is below. Because I think, as we begin to lose our veterans who served in older wars, that's a huge part of the discussion that generally is not documented in a way that the public can understand and know the personal impact of the war life, to be fair, right? What it was like for all of these probably young men and women who went off to serve. And if we don't document that information, it can get easily lost to antiquity.
And JK gave me a soundbite with that basic information specifically of like, these guys are falling through the cracks, like his uncle and his uncle before, and so I'll send you that clip whenever we get a chance. But a guy like him that wants to memorialize those individuals, and I thought that was really cool of him to do that. So yeah, no, that's what we got to do. By all means, I'd love to put him in the next edition, second edition of the book.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what my buddy Scott from watchestry.com is doing with he's the author of the Marine Nationale book, which I'm sure you've probably heard of. A somewhat similar pathway. He's not launched a watch brand or a watch himself, but he has become the unofficial authority documentarian of the Marine National Watches, traditionally Tudor, but also other brands. I think you guys, I should connect the two of you. I think you guys could definitely talk shop, kind of operating in similar spaces. I think it's an amazing journey, and it's one that I'm, happy to ride along with for a portion of it. And just talking watches with you.
Oh, totally.
It's been a blessing to make a new friend across the miles, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I appreciate it as well. So yeah, you're a good guy. I appreciate your YouTube channel, what you do in that watch review space, your efforts to inspire young collectors to step away from that simpler watch, and discover something truly remarkable. There's a unique joy in collecting vintage pieces and modern pieces that are well built, you know. And
Sure.
the quartz watches are always reliable. We all know them, but they're sort of aloof, if you will. But there's a certain magic in wearing sort of those vintage chronographs with that, or with a rich history, and be able to turn that crown and feel it come to life. There's nothing like it. So I commend your efforts to kind of steer those individuals, which we all know the watches they're wearing. And I appreciate those watches that are out there that give you your text and all that stuff, because it's making younger people want to wear watches. And then once
I think that's the truth.
Yeah.
I think that the smartwatch craze, if you will, is not going to have the same impact as the quartz crisis did. I think it is going, because here's the thing, I have one, and why wasn't it called the iWatch? I have the Apple iWatch, but I only use it to time my, or rather measure my heartbeat when I'm working out, and I don't really work out, so I don't really wear it. I'm almost always wearing my mechanical watches, if nothing else. I want to say thank you so much to Chris for his time today, and as we always do when we're watch yapping, I like to hand the mic back over to the guest to give us some of their final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the invite, D. Love watching your channel. It seems like watch collecting has grown in popularity even so much since COVID. And whether it's a vintage or a modern piece, we know the certain brands that are very popular and the ones that kind of fade into obscurity. But let's not forget about those brands that do mimic some of those famous designs, which we appreciate their endeavors. I mean, Jardur has them too, and it's awesome. So. But it's important to be cautious too. But just watch out the ones that want to. Are they really willing? Are they wanting to get into horology, or they want to make a profit? Just make sure that those companies that you do spend the money and the time with, that it's right here and not right here. Because they put that effort into it. But always subscribe to the channel, right? It's a wonderful channel. I love your interviews, and again, I appreciate the watch review that you do on everything. Obviously, love the Ronin one. But it's funny. I'll tell you a quick story. But I wrote Robert De Niro about that watch and Ronin, and actually sent a screenshot, and I sent him hey. Can you tell me the story about that watch? And all I got back was the picture with his signature. So
that's more than I got, because I wrote Jean Reno, the French actor who played the helper guy. I wrote him on Instagram trying to find out about the chronograph he was wearing. I got back crickets, and his Instagram is not that large for considering his celebrity status. I should have gotten back something. Maybe I should have written to him in French.
Well, yeah, no doubt. It took about a year for Robert to get back. So one day I'm like, what is this? But anyway, it's been a fun ride. I can't wait to see what the next ride's all about with it. And again, I appreciate with you and the invites and hanging out with your viewers. So
right on. So where is the book available? Is that on your website or is that Amazon?
It's on Amazon, and definitely if you want to give one away to any of your viewers, or how you want to do it.
Awesome.
So by all means, I'll do a little quick signature of whoever gets it. I don't know how you'll do it. And so by all means, let's give one away if you're cool with it.
All right, cool. Let's So check out. I link to everything in the description. But impromptu giveaway. I need to come up with a phrase that pays, but for the Jardur book, let's see. I need a funny phrase that pays. Yo, D, I'm in the XYZ, and XYZ is your country. I need to know where we're shipping to. Yo, D, I'm in the XYZ. Hook me up with some Jardur goodness. Drop that in a comment to this video. Hit me up downstairs with that, and I will connect you and Chris, and we'll get that drop shipped out to you. And thank you so much for the impromptu giveaway. Kind of didn't expect that today, but that's very generous of you, sir.
You bet.
And I think after the call, we'll spend some time shooting that desktop video. Best desktop setup of any guest on the channel to date. You've raised the bar, sir. So grateful to you for coming along on the ride.
Giddy up.
And I'm grateful to you as well for coming along on the ride in this wonderful, beautiful hobby of ours. We will catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.
If you'd like to support the channel, head over to hobbyofhours.com. We've got artwork, coffee mugs, hats, t-shirts, and even a watch book. 1001 Watch Designs, Volume 1. Over 1,000 designs in here. Steampunk, super futuristic, kaleidoscope, even super real ones. Watches that you could probably put on your wrist today. It's a great way to support the channel. Thanks for coming along on the ride.